Hey folks, it's Pugs with a breakdown of tonight's big Strikeforce card on Showtime. At 9 o'clock on Showtime, Strikeforce Rockhold versus Jardine. And by the way, if you're interested in the preliminary bouts, you can catch that on Showtime Extreme starting at 7 o'clock. Let's get into the main card, and I'll give you some picks. Middleweight bout opening up the main card on Showtime tonight is going to be Keith Jardine versus Roger Gracie. Keith Jardine, a name probably familiar to some of you casual MMA fans. Keith Jardine, longtime popular fighter in the UFC, has found himself a new home in Strikeforce after rattling off 4 losses in a row. Now, 4 losses in a row is a lot, but it just speaks to how popular a fighter and how popular a guy Keith Jardine was around the UFC. Most guys get dropped from the UFC roster after 2 losses. He was given 4. So he's found a new home in Strikeforce, which is, a division of Zuffa, who owns the UFC. So, as I say, Strikeforce is sort of a AAA affiliate of the UFC, although don't be fooled by that, because a lot of the guys in Strikeforce, they go back and forth between the UFC and Strikeforce. So, so the first fight, we've got Keith Jardine taking on Roger Gracie. Gracie, of course, a name familiar to all MMA fans, pioneers of the sport of MMA. The Gracie name has fallen on some tough times in the past few years, based in fact, what happened was Gracie Jiu-Jitsu was such a spectacular form of combat fighting that when it first debuted in the octagon, people just didn't know how to deal with it. And over the years, what has happened is instead of people trying to get really good at Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, people just learned to get really good at defending Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, which is infinitely easier a proposition. So, Roger Gracie, the latest in a line of great Gracie Jiu-Jitsu fighters, enters the Strikeforce, what is it? I don't even know. What is it? Octagon? The cage. We'll call it a cage. Versus Keith Jardine. This is going to be a very interesting fight because Gracie is, of course, a jiu-jitsu standout, an absolutely unbelievably talented jiu-jitsu player. He's coming off a loss to King Mo. That was a KO. Got KO'd in the first round. All right, so maybe he wasn't ready to go after a guy quite like King Mo, but he was undefeated coming into that fight with 4 straight wins over relatively well-known fighters, if not older, the geriatric set of MMA. I believe it was like Waterman, Yuki Kondo, fought Prangley, Trevor Prangley, Kevin Randleman, and then he met a young, spry, game, and beast of a man in King Mo Lual, got KO'd in the first round. So now he's got Keith Jardine. This is going to be interesting. Keith Jardine is a difficult guy for almost anybody to fight because he is such a non-traditional guy. He's got weird, awkward stances. And if you watch the fights tonight on Showtime, you're going to hear this over and over. Oh, Jardine is so hard to anticipate. He comes at you from so many different strange angles. That's Jardine's thing. He's an awkward, weird fighter. But for some reason, the awkwardness works for him. He's been able to put together a great career in the world of MMA. However, he's not exactly the fastest guy out there. He's a bit stone-footed, and his hands aren't exactly the quickest thing going, although that is sort of made up for in the fact that they come at you from angles that you never expect. I think that this is going to be one for Roger Gracie. Coming off the loss to King Mo Lual, I think Roger Gracie is going to be able to catch the slow-footed Jardine, take him to the ground, and at some point he's just going to do what the Gracies do, and that'll be a submission. So I'm going with a submission win for Roger Gracie over Keith Jardine, opening up tonight's Strikeforce card. Second fight of the night is a middleweight bout. Oh, by the way, Jardine and Gracie is also a middleweight bout. That's 185 pounds. Middleweight bout number 2 of the night is going to pit Robbie Lawler against Lorenz Larkin. Now, Robbie Lawler, he's an interesting fighter. You may be familiar with his name, his longtime partnership with Matt Hughes and former career in the UFC, Elite XC. Robbie Lawler's been around doing this for a very, very long time. Robbie Lawler is also coming off a loss to King Mo Lual, although it was a KO in the second round, but it was overturned because King Mo tested positive for some kind of steroid or something like that. So this is going to be an interesting fight. Lorenz Larkin is an exciting fighter, but he has been touched. King Mo touched him, and King Mo is primarily a wrestler. Robbie Lawler is not. Robbie Lawler has big hands. He can put you down. I really want to go with Lorenz Larkin here, but I think Robbie Lawler is going to touch him. I think that Lorenz Larkin is going to go down, and I'm going to go with Robbie Lawler by TKO in the third. Let's call it that. All right, now let's move on to the big exciting fights. These are the strap fights. We've got a welterweight championship bout between Nate Marquardt. That's right, it's the very same Nate Marquardt. You may remember him. He was formerly the number 3 middleweight in the world. He was the number 1 contender in the UFC, fought Anderson Silva. In his last fight in the UFC, he got put down rather quickly by Chael Sonnen, who caught him, dropped him hard, and now Nate Marquardt is making his debut in the welterweight division of Strikeforce, and he has no easy task in front of him. He's taking on Tyrone Woodley. Woodley is a standout wrestler who can also throw the hands pretty well. I haven't seen any of the lines. I would have to imagine that because of his pedigree that Nate Marquardt is the favorite here. But I'm going to take the dark horse. I'm going to go with Tyrone Woodley. I think Tyrone Woodley is going to defeat Nate Marquardt in his Strikeforce debut at welterweight. Now, truth be told, I'm a big Tyrone Woodley fan. I love his fight style. I think he's about as exciting a young up-and-coming fighter that Strikeforce or just about any other organization has to offer. So maybe I'm a bit biased. Take Tyrone Woodley over Nate Marquardt for the welterweight championship in Strikeforce. All right, here we go. Now, with the main event of the night, it is the middleweight championship bout between Luke Rockhold and Tim Kennedy. Boy, Tim Kennedy is a difficult guy to root against. Tim Kennedy is a tough-as-nails game opponent. And by the way, he is currently, sort of a dual career Tim Kennedy has going on. He's in the Special Forces. He's an Army Ranger. And he's also one of the world's top middleweight MMA fighters. Tim Kennedy is coming off a win over Robbie Lawler. He also came off a win, was it Melvin Manhoef? Yeah, it was Lawler and Manhoef who he defeated. That was after a loss to Ronaldo Jacare Souza. That was for the vacant Strikeforce middleweight bout. 2 wins over guys like Manhoef and Lawler. And now we've got Tim Kennedy getting another shot at the middleweight strap in Strikeforce, held currently by Luke Rockhold. Now, Luke Rockhold, boy, I don't really know how to go with this one. This is a tough one because Tim Kennedy's one of those guys because of his service to our country and because he's just such a soft-spoken and intellectual guy. You want to root for him. But Luke Rockhold looks like he could be a beast. He's coming off wins over Keith Jardine. He also had a unanimous decision victory over Ronaldo Jacare Souza. So in the game of common opponents, I guess you could say with a little MMA math that because Rockhold beat Souza and Souza beat Kennedy, that, well, it must be obvious that Rockhold can then beat Kennedy. Boy, you can lose your kid's child's fun betting on MMA math. This is going to be a good fight. However, I am going to go with Rockhold to retain the championship in the Strikeforce middleweight division. All right, all of these fights start at 9 o'clock, but if you can't get enough and you can't wait till then, Showtime Extreme is showing the preliminary card at 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock on Showtime Extreme, and that's going to be an interesting one as well. It's got some names on there, some people you might want to watch. For instance, a guy that I'm really interested in is Ryan Couture. That's right, Ryan Couture, Randy Couture's little kid. He's going to be taking on Joe Duarte. That's for a lightweight fight. It's strange, Ryan Couture, his dad was a heavyweight, light heavyweight, and then Ryan's just a little lightweight, but we'll see. Also, Pat Healy, another exciting fighter. He'll be in a lightweight bout on the preliminary card of Showtime Extreme stream against Mizuto Hirota. Am I saying that right? Not exactly. These Japanese names, they trip me up. Not quite as bad as these Eastern European names or some of these bizarre Brazilian names, but you get the idea. All right, folks, that's it. That's my rundown of tonight's Strikeforce card. Again, at 9 o'clock on Showtime, Strikeforce Rockhold versus Kennedy, and preliminary card being shown on Showtime Extreme at 7 o'clock. Enjoy the fights, folks. This is Pugs.